Hey, Bill.
Hello.
Bill,
Yes.
how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Well, I'm doing okay, but do you remember James Ferguson, the guy who lived two doors down from me?
Yeah, hold on just a moment.
Okay.
No?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, he died. He died a few weeks ago, and his funeral service is going to take place in about 15 minutes, and it's going to be online on Zoom. And I have to speak at the funeral along with some other people. So I was just calling to get the time that you want me to show up tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So, because this thing is going to go for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to do that now, just so that you won't be calling while I'm online.
Yeah, okay. It's 10:15.
Okay, but yeah, but you usually have us come a little earlier to run over the songs.
We can't, that's the only time we get because they use a church for Sunday school.
Okay, I'll be there
And it's
10:50.
and so Sunday school goes from quarter to 10 to quarter to 11. So
Oh,
what he does is Sundays that we have to go, that we rehearse, what he used to do is have them cut off earlier. So we can rehearse in the sanctuary. So we usually get in the sanctuary like around 10:30. That's when we wrap up everything. But I still tell people to get there like 10:15.
okay,
That's what I've been telling Charles. Charles is not playing the part, it's just you and I.
okay, all right,
Charles is out of town.
okay. I'll see you at 10:15.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Hey, what are you
Okay.
wearing? What are you wearing?
I think we back in the dress down mode.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, see you then.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye,
Bye.
bye.
You also just push unstop video. What's this for?
Let's go out and get back in.
Why?
Is it this all it's showing is the video?
Uh-huh.
So is it just starting there?
I don't know.
It might be just starting. How many people in?
He wanted his friends and family to gather and tell funny stories about their relationship with him, and then dance to James Bradley. And then finally, the James Brown part that happens. I'm hoping that today's celebration strikes the right balance. Fun. We'll open with a prayer, hear highlights of the day, hear from the family, speak on behalf of all of them, hear from our godson, will read the scripture dedicated to all time. I've listed some friends who have special relationships with us over the years. Just to share a few words, some of you may be surprised because, you know, we have been together for so long, it just seems kind of a natural thing. And all are listed in the program that's included in the memorial booklet, which I will put the table there. I'm going to call now for Minister Denise Lawson, the state chaplain, to come now to offer the prayer. And Roderick and Ava Johnson will help me kind of navigate through the rest of the sentence.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to extend my heartfelt thank you to the Ferguson County family, and the friends, lost things. As we have come together to celebrate his life, I pray everything spoken here today will comfort you, add to your peace, and help you rejoice and thank God for the time you had during this grace. I look forward to hearing the story. First and secondly, I want to tell a brief story of when I first met him. I met him September 2020 at the family birthday party. And Simone and I are friends, but we always share stories about our families. So I felt like I knew him when I met him. I walked up to him and introduced myself. And I said that because of my relationship with Simone, I am an ex-officio member of the family. And I am also a September baby. No, my name is not on the cake, but I am celebrating with this party anyway. Hey. And he laughed and gave me a hug. So I know he had a good humor, and I know he's a well-educated person. I am grateful and honored that you asked me to, because I get to have an opportunity to celebrate another Ferguson. All hearts and souls divided against you. Father God, we approach your throne of grace today, bringing the Ferguson and Jones family and friends before you. We recognize that grief is a human emotion process, and that in that time they were in the rest that you have provided for grief. Father, I know that your spirit is upon them to bind and hurt and heal the sadness of their hearts. May each and every one be gentle with themselves and know that they are not alone, that you are here for them, and you never leave them. Father, I pray for each and every person that's present in this room, and that it's everybody to be a doer and not a hero, and thereby commit to continue to help his family bear the burden of their lives. We rejoice with those who rejoice in sharing the joy, but we also weep with those who weep and share the joy. We pray that our love will give this family great joy, comfort, and encouragement. I thank you, Father, for sending the Holy Spirit to comfort them, strengthen them, and stand by them while they go through this period of adjustment. Father, it's a special blessing for us. Let her know that she is loved and very much appreciated. Let her find comfort in remembering that she gave her beloved husband for the best, and the labor of her love is not her back. Father, I know that you hear the petitions of our hearts, and I know you put them to fruit. Amen. Amen.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morris. I'm from Wisconsin. We will now be hearing James' Life Path highlights from Simone Jones.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for coming out today to be with us. Thank you for your sacrifices, those that have traveled near and far. We appreciate you. You're the light to us. And again, we're just thankful for the presence here today. As I read James's life path, we do know that he did basically carve out his own path in life. I would say he was very much a trendsetter, jet setter, record breaker, just whatever. He was just an all-around individual. Aside from being my brother-in-law, he was more of a brother to me. More so, or I'll say as much as those that I grew up in a household with. James never been a stranger. We often laugh. He would draw you in with his stories, he was such an intellectual, had lived a really full life. And I am just glad today to be here to celebrate his life. So in reading James's path, as we said, he walked his own path. He was just as comfortable making his delicious deep dish sweet potato pie or a pair of pants, building a brick patio and gardening as he was making a winning touchdown or leading a major voting rights or political campaign. He was adventurous and loved to read. He biked, ran for miles, and made a respectable showing for his age group in the 1997 Marine Corps Marathon. He created the perfect Zen garden in the backyard in the DC home and planted beautiful blooms in the yards in Alabama. To say he was a great cook, that really is an understatement. He was a grill master, and he did not let you forget that. He was a grill. He was in charge of the grill, okay? I back up. And he loved to make preserves and cook different cuisines. He was born September 14, 1952, to James Jeffro Ferguson Jr. and Bernard Blake in Berkeley, California. He grew up in Richmond and Oakland, California with his sisters, Glenda, Jane, Dorlin, Mona, Cassandra, Patricia, and brother Marcus. He attended public schools in Richmond and was a star athlete at Kennedy High School, excelling at baseball, which was his first love, and football. Upon graduating from Kennedy in 1970, he was accepted to Stanford University on a football scholarship. In 1974, he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, where he played defensive back. Following his football career, he worked in the Oakland office of Congressman Ronald B. Dellums, and then returned to Stanford to complete his bachelor's degree. He graduated in 1983 with a bachelor's degree in anthropology. He later moved to Washington, D.C., where he worked on the staff of Congressman Dellums and later for Congresswoman Barbara Mikulski. In 1985, he joined the political action team at the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, or better known as AFSCME, AFL-CIO, where he led several voter education and mobilization initiatives. He returned to Oakland in 1991, where he worked as a labor union representative for the California Service Employees Association until he returned to Washington in 1993. In 1993, he was selected to lead the National Coalition on Black Voter Participation as its executive director. He partnered with numerous organizations to strengthen voting rights for Black voters and fund local Operation Big Vote chapters. He also focused on the youth involvement in the political process through NCBVP's Black Youth Vote. In 1997, he joined the leadership
team at the Congress of National Black Churches as Director of Research and Planning. In 2001, he began his own venture, Practical Politics Research Group, or PPRG, where he partnered with the Florida Democratic Party and other organizations on state and local voter mobilization. He partnered with the Dellums Group to lobby for an increased role for minority company involvement in providing communication services. He also served on the boards of the American for Democratic Action and the Pacifica Foundation. In August of 2008, James began the battle of all time when he was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. Over the years, he fought gallantly and moved forward to do many things he loved, and with the same sense of purpose and humor that he demonstrated. I just want to say that I am going to sorely miss my dear big brother, Jethro Jim Bob, as I like to call him. Sometimes I would also call him Herman Monster, because he reminded me of that, because if you would think about that sitcom, Herman was, he was a little bit on the clumsy side. James wasn't clumsy, but he didn't know his own strength. And so James had the ability to rip faucets out of the granite or rip the handles off the refrigerator, just going to open the refrigerator. And it was just always something where the technicians who would come out to say, well, how did this happen? We said, well, my sister would say, my husband did it. I said, well, my brother-in-law did it. He just went to open the refrigerator. He just didn't know his own strength. And so when he would come into a room, he would just light up the room. And he was always loud and laughing and jovial. And at the same time, he always wanted to hug you, but you have to kind of get ready for it because he's gonna squeeze you. And so you just like, okay, so your glasses are gonna get messed up, your makeup, just everything, your hair, just like, okay, yeah, all right. But anyway, again, this is most certainly a celebration of his life. I will miss him dearly, as I do every day. I guess the one thing that I am happy about is that he is no longer in pain. He no longer has to endure what he did. And again, very grateful that he did fight a really good fight. And he's finished his course. So I just want to say to Jethro Chumba, happy Heavenly Father's Day, and to all of the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. God bless you. Oh.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Now we're going to move into family prayer and reflections from Sharon Ford. A virtual reflection.
Yes. If you would just bow your heads and pray with me. Father God, there's a missing link in the Dansby family chain. A soldier who fought a good fight and finished his battle. Father, today we give thanks for the life of James, who has been taken from among us. I pray for my family's strength, and especially for Marcia today and in days to come. I ask that you will lift up our hung down heads and mend our broken hearts. Father, you said for the spirit of heaviness that you would give us a garment of praise as we celebrate the honorable homegoing of James. We thank you and we bless your holy name. Amen.
He's on there, he's.
Good evening, family and friends. My name is Curtis Nathaniel Blake, and I am James's oldest living uncle. You will shortly see why my full name is significant. I greet you all with a burdened heart from losing a nephew that I deeply loved and respected. James's mother was my only sister, and James was my oldest nephew. I visited my sister in California in August of 1952 and decided to stay. James was born 1 month later in September, just a month prior to my 18th birthday. I watched James as he progressed through school, playing sports, and then went off to college. James made the big time when he graduated from Stanford University, where he played football. After graduating from Stanford, he was number 5 draft choice to the Minnesota Vikings. Did I mention respect? Well, let's add pride to the list. Wow. After James's football career, he became a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Now that really blew my mind. Now back to the significance of my full name. When I was growing up and my mother would call me using my whole name, Curtis Nathaniel Blake, I knew I was in trouble for something that I had done. The same thing happened with James Jeffro Ferguson Jr. when he got in trouble. But James showed much love for his mother and his grandmother. The last time I visited James, he cooked sweet potato pie from his grandmother's recipe. James always said he got his height from his grandpa Blake, who he loved and even named his son, Matthew, after his grandpa. I always loved my sister's children because I could see my sister in all of them. James has lived a great life with his adorable wife, Marcia. May he rest in peace. Thank you all very much, and may God bless you all.
Are there any more questions from the family? Next up, we have the Watson.
Yeah,
My name is Glenda Cutright. I am James's oldest sister. I'm not sure I'm able to say anything much except that I am really feeling the loss here, and when I think about the last couple of times I saw James, he always, made me smile, even if it was not a great occasion. And the last time he visited my home, he made dinner for my granddaughter and myself, which was totally delicious. And he always called me Big Sis, but I never felt like Big Sis. I felt like he was my big brother because he was so caring. And I appreciate the fact that he really understood me, that I'm not really outgoing like he was, but he'd say, "Sis, I know you don't call, I'll just call you." I said, "Thank you." But I appreciate my brother. I appreciate Marcia being such a wonderful wife all these years to James. And I thank you all for coming. Thank you.
So now we have Ferguson.
There she go.
Next up, we have Matthew Melendez. Okay. So at this point, we will move into a scripture selected for Uncle James and for all fathers. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, beginning at verse 13. There these words are recorded. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again. And so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Amen. And now we will move into reflections from friends, starting with the Johnson family.
So we are Norris's parents and sister. And thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. It looks like you shoot the router echo device, so try restarting them. Then plug the router back in. Wait 30 seconds. Once the
So
router
videographer, we're good, right? We're good, okay, all right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Broderick Johnson, and this is our daughter, Asia Johnson, and my wife, Michelle Johnson. We are so honored to share our own family's thoughts about James, who was an incomparable friend. Like, James set a standard for friendship that was unbelievable. Marcia, thank you for sharing this man with us. And for showering James with abundant compassion and love and care. And for giving all of us the opportunity to come together to celebrate James's life. Marcia, your enduring display of strength and perseverance during such days of deep personal loss is really remarkable. So thank you very much for bringing us all together. You are something else too. So maybe I can lighten things up just slightly and say some funny things about James, because there was a lot. James's uncle in the description of names reminded me of what I was going to say. So James had two names for me, Brod and Broderick Johnson. Right? It wasn't Broderick. It was either Brod or Broderick Johnson. It'd be the whole name. And oftentimes it was Broderick Johnson. James and I met almost 40 years ago. We met through sports. It wasn't at a game. It was through sports legislation. So I was working on Capitol Hill as a young legislative counsel. And James was working for Congresswoman Barbara Mikulski at the time. And my then favorite football team, the Baltimore Colts, had been driven out of Baltimore by their owner. And James was working for a Baltimore Congresswoman, so she sent James Ferguson down, her staffer, to meet with me to talk about drafting legislation. Now the barn was already, the horse was already out of the barn with the Baltimore Colts, but she wanted to make sure that other teams couldn't leave so easily. So James came down, and over a series of weeks, we drafted legislation that didn't become law, but we became friends as a result. And over the years, we celebrated life as brothers do, as housemates, lifetime of moments, big and small, weddings, baptisms, births, graduations, holidays, vacations. I wish I had an hour, but it wouldn't be enough to cover every year of the 38 years of our friendship. But I want to share one of the more transcendent aspects of it. And I see there's this Stanford University football stuff over here. And Marcia, I don't know why you do that to me. Because see, not long after I met James, I'm a University of Michigan graduate and a University of Michigan fan. Crazy fan, right? They all know this, right? So it wasn't long after we met, James started talking to me, telling me, bragging about the 1972 Rose Bowl game, where an undefeated Michigan team played a Stanford team that had 3 losses, so Michigan was supposed to blow Stanford out, right? And of course, Stanford won the game. Now, James didn't share with me, though, that he'd been involved in a controversial play in that game.
Wrong way, Ferguson.
Oh, okay. So, but I went back and you can actually watch that play.
You didn't watch the game?
Right, and so I have. I've watched that game, and I've watched it for that play.
Did you watch the Jordan game?
No, see, this is not about now. This is about the past. We're going to talk about the past. So you all have heard that, the term GOAT. It gets used now for like as an acronym for greatest of all time. But the referee in that game tried to make James the GOAT in the bad sense of the word. Wrong way, Ferguson. Well, he got tackled by a Michigan player in the end zone, but the ref blew it. James really did not commit a safety. I will admit that. James, you did a great play. It wasn't your fault, brother. It wasn't your fault. Okay, now stop haunting me about that play, James. And so here, I've mentioned vacations. So there were many years when James and I would drive back from Martha's Vineyard together. Well, everyone else flew, but we got 500 miles. And we were coming back from a trip, and it was the first game of the season, and it was a game when Michigan was playing, on Saturday, Michigan was playing Appalachian State, and we were listening to ESPN on radio, and they were like, a big upset of historic proportions is going on in a big house. And so I had to say to James, can you take the wheel? Because I'm really distracted and we might not make it home. And so like the first thing James said, of course, was, sure, after he said, I'll take the wheel. Do you remember that 1972 Rose Bowl game, bro? Wasn't that something? The legend of James Jeffro Ferguson and his impact on my life, the life of our family, enormous impact he had on the world. And it's all, his impact on my family is all typified by this. So these two applied to the University of Michigan for undergrad and law school. And they also applied to Stanford. And guess where they're gonna get their degrees from? Stanford University, okay? And you know what? I don't feel bad about that, not one bit, because they will follow in the footsteps of a great, great man. And every time I get to go to Stanford, I'll think about James and the presence that he has had in our lives. So James, brother, till we meet again.
And think about James and how much he would have loved to see everybody in this room, because sometimes it felt like you nailed it, that life was a party and he was the host. And the party started whenever he walked in the room. The word that I keep thinking about when I think about James is delicious. In part because he loved to cook. I see him at the kitchen. He was a messy cook too. You know, there was just stuff all over the place. But it was always so good and so abundant. That's the other word I think about with James, is abundance. He was a big man, and you're right, he would hug you and he would mess up your hair and your makeup, and you'd have to like shift your dress again, you know, because he would practically lift you up off the ground. I am so grateful for the joy that he brought into our life. When I met my husband, James was part of the deal. Because they were sharing a house together. Yeah, he did. And I was actually pretty nervous about that. And I burnt the greens. And so that was what he talked about for a long time. And I had to call my mother, Betty, who's watching from Minnesota, and she taught me a trick to put a potato in the pot, and it sopped up some of the burnt, but not all of it. But I thank him so much for also the way that he demonstrated his zest for life to our children, and how devoted he was to our kids and to my mother, Betty. So thank you for the wisdom that you poured into their lives. Thank you for the joy that you gave all of us. Thank you for the style you injected. You know, there was that song, I can't remember who sang it, Estelle, I think, before he spoke, his suit bespoke. That was James. I think he was the best dressed man in any room that he ever entered. Did he really have 500 pairs of shoes? Yeah. And he was committed, not just, I don't want to leave you with the impression that he was only committed to having a good time. And when you think about what we're going through in this country right now, his life's work around voting rights is so important. And I think that that is one of the ways that I hope our children will continue his legacy, and perhaps everyone in this room, to think about the fight for democracy, and in this moment, maybe carry on that fight and raise that torch in honor of James Jethro Ferguson. Thank you very much.
I can say something. I'm a woman of a few words, so I won't say much. But I think a lot about, you know, my brother and I, our decision to go to Stanford. And I think a lot of that was because of Uncle James. And I know my dad has, you know, opinions about where we should have gone. But I think that, you know, when I was a kid, my dream was to go to Stanford. And I think I was injected with a sense of like gratitude and excitement about this great place. And so, you know, as I begin to make plans to go to law school this fall, I'll carry Uncle James with me wherever I go. Thank you. And Marcia, we will be.
So now we invite the bakers, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hilda.
I'm Aaliyah.
We're from North Carolina. We have known James Marcia for a number of years, and he was part of our family. James Marcia was part of our family. And, Marcia got with James. James was, from that point, Uncle James. He was always Uncle James. We loved him, and he loved us, and we knew that. We are grateful for all the memories that we have, all the times we spent with James and Marcia, for graduations, birthdays, Easter, and always making her late for service, and just for we can visit at their home. They always made sure that you felt more than welcome in their home. James had a way of letting you know that you were important to him, from sending fudge on birthdays because he knew you absolutely adored it, or for bantering with our kids about the good and bad of Duke sports, football and basketball, but I think you kind of have to be on basketball. Because he knew that they were rather fans, both was attended Duke University. To fix you a great meal because he knew you loved to eat and he could cook, and food was his love language. And he definitely spoke it well. I can't tell you how many different dishes we got to try because James would put it there in front of you, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know this could taste so good. We're gonna miss your big hugs, your easy smile, and your heartfelt laughter. And most of all, we're gonna miss you the gentle way that you're being present and there for us. You always felt like when you were with him that he was there. He was engaged in what you were talking about, and he could talk to you about anything for hours. And we love that about him. We're thankful to be part of his life's journey, and we're very, very grateful for that. And Marcia, you know how much we love you and how much we love James. And we're just thankful for you being there with him and taking such very good care of him.
Yeah, should have gone first because she has this prepared speech. It's downhill from there. At least on my part. But just to reiterate a lot of what you've already heard in terms of James was like a brother to me. Anytime he came around, he treated me as if we've known each other for years and years. And something that I'm sure many of you who know him have experienced the same kind of relationship with him. As Hilda mentioned, I think we had steak back last fall. I didn't know steak could taste that. I felt like a 3-week-old tick. Thank you so much. But that was James in terms of whether we were discussing food or sports. We shared a lot of different experiences with sports, whether it was football or one of my passions was the track and field. James was always there or talking about those types of things. So he was dear to us, as we've said, and will always remain such, and has become part of us.
Thank you.
I also did not prepare anything. My mom left. Yeah. But yesterday while I was in this morning, which always makes me think of y'all, a friend asked me what memories I had and what the story would be that I would tell someone if they asked me about local things. And fudge was the first thing that I remembered. But I also really think that after college, I went out to Oakland for a while and spent a lot of time there, and I always felt a connection to him through being in Oakland and walking around the streets and remembering all the stories that he used to tell me about where he grew up. And I vividly remember one time him actually showing me kind of the area where he grew up, and I felt like his affinity and connections with him through my relationship to Oakland. And I also just really, I think sometimes you don't know the influence that people have on you when you're like younger and you see them hanging out with parents and your kid and you're just kind of like in and out and you don't necessarily spend a bunch of time, but enough time to know that they love you and they care about you and know wherever you are in the world and the country, people have your back. You know, I remember hearing from other folks that Uncle James had put it in word for me or was looking out for me, even from wherever he was while I was in Oakland and my time in California. I always felt really well taken care of. But another thing that comes to mind is just remembering how just cool and awesome I thought Aunt Marcia and Uncle James were, and how I was hoping that when I got to be an adult, I could be, you know, as smart and as funny and as generous and as kind and warm and loving. And that's definitely what the record today is. I think about both of you and how y'all impacted my life. So thank you. I love you all, Marcia. And love you with Uncle James. Okay.
Hi, I'm Medea. No, we are not twins. We just have twin names. And I too will keep my remarks short. I'm probably the only litigator that doesn't really enjoy public speaking. And I think that's actually something that Uncle James always picked up on. He knew that I was a deeply introverted person, but he knew how to make me feel comfortable in that sense. If we were in a room together, we could just sit in silence and breathe and still feel connected, and have the ability to do that and recognize that the person you are communicating with needs a little space sometimes, and still be able to foster a warm relationship with them is a deeply invaluable trait. That he was able to foster connections with so many different people over the span of his life is just a testament to the man that he was. Marcia, we love you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Asset family.
Okay.
Know that?
All right, so on the cup, here we are. You know, James and Marcia came to us via Bill's, Marcia and Bill working together. And we just had a connection. I mean, as all of you have said, you know, it was the food. For me, it was the gardening. It was just fun and light and community and camaraderie. And that is a life well lived. And he certainly gives me things to think about. You know, the things that y'all are saying, I'm like, yeah, those are the right ways to be. So hopefully we take from here today that the goodness that he brought to all of us in the example. So love you, Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, James came to meet me through Marcia. It's all Marcia's fault. James is probably one of the biggest kids I ever met, which fit really well with me. And I think we were over at your place and he had a bunch of red tiles in the back and he was looking for more. And I said, it just so happens, I think I have about 160 to 180 of those in my backyard. So James decided to rent a truck. And we ruined that truck. It was only a half-ton truck that took 2 loads from my place to his, and I think we hit the blocks a few times on the springs. But it was a nice warm day. It was probably 90, 95 degrees. Marcia and Carol were there, and we're trying to talk them into helping us, and they said, "No, we're gonna go shopping." But they did get brown for food. But James and I did about kill each other that day. We had to shower at your place because you guys cooked us some dinner late that day. And I think the last time I talked, Broderick, James did say that his niece and nephew were smarter than their father. No doubt they would go to Stanford. That was right after he told me about his goose problem in his backyard. So, you know, anyway, aside of it, James is just a good guy and a good friend. And Marcy and James even helped take care of my son a few times. So I'm gonna let you talk to him.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably one of the younger people knowing James and Marcia, but when I had the opportunity going down to school in Texas, and I had to drive my car back down there or to and from there several times, starting sophomore year. And every time I made sure to stop in Birmingham. Yeah, fantastic. It's the perfect 10-hour point between DC and Dallas. So it was great after a long day driving. I would stop in and have a lovely night dinner with them. So always a highlight of the trip. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Walker.
Everybody, if you're able to stand up and give me a round of applause. Come on. If you've never done anything for James, just gave him a standing ovation. Walkers, and I'm the mouthpiece, like James, large and in charge. This is my husband, Andre, and he's post-op and he's working it too. He had told me done, so I don't know what that has to do with his mouth, but he said, come on, you do you. But anyway, we are the lucky, blessed neighbors of Marcia and James. We live across the lake. And we encountered each other. And it was an instant relationship. I know James and Marcia as friend, family, neighbor. When we first met, you would never know that he had this type of past, that he had worked with Congress, he had gone to Stanford, He wasn't full of himself. We talked about flowers, bugs, getting rid of the geese and the community. I didn't like him, James didn't like him, And so we had this different kind of bond than probably the rest of you. But he was like a good man. He instilled the real meaning of neighbor and friend and us. And if you don't know it, you don't have to be in your neighbor's house every day. But I could hit that number if I needed something, or if Dre needed something, or if they needed something. We're there. We're there. And we're just so blessed to have encountered him in our life, just like all of you. And to see him over the time, it was just miraculous. I can remember him at the birthday party with him out there on the floor dancing with his king. He could do it. But again, we're gonna keep ours short. Thank you so much, Marcia and Simone, for including us in this moment. Gotta cheer my guy on. Okay. Always. Anything you say over there?
Well, I guess I could reiterate that I had known James for very long. But sitting here listening to his story. And I said, I heard that before. We've been neighbors for a short while, about 4 years, something like that. But James was a very intelligent person, very intellectual. James could talk sports. James could talk about any subject. I can see why he was a lobbyist, because that's what lobbyists do, right? They argue both pro and con. But he could talk about just about any subject that came up. And one more thing y'all need to know about James. He had an ignorant side too. he could talk, he could talk, and he could be very intelligent. He could turn around and say something ignorant. I cherish the time I spent with James, and I just want to take it, it has been said that chance makes us parents, but choice makes us friends. Take it a step further, that the chance to choose.
Thank you. Next up, we have Marsha Williamson.
Greetings, everyone. Had I known, I might have written something down, so I'm going to try to speak from my heart and not ramble. Okay. In 1998, I had the honor and privilege of moving next door to James and Marcia Ferguson on Nash Street. Best day of my life. Best neighbors ever. I got some good ones now, but you all are still the best. Yes. And I never felt like a stranger. I felt like I had a brother and sister living next door to me. So when I bought the house, my backyard was just a patch of dirt. And I was the recipient of James building a beautiful brick patio for me that I thoroughly enjoy now, to the point that my house is party central. I never had to give an invitation to say come over or vice versa. We didn't stay in each other's house, but we were always there for each other. As a single parent, single person trying to do a home, I didn't know who was gonna try to beat me out of a repair or whatever, but I could always call James and run it by him. Now I know, I'm glad I never asked him to fix anything. Great advice, always. And I thought that I was a reader until I started talking to James. And he'd be like, well, what you reading? I was in a book club and I'd tell him, oh yeah, I read that. But what are you reading that? Oh, what are you reading, James? Oh, I got about 4 books I'm reading. At one time, James, I'd see him the next week and he was finished reading all of them. So and let me say this, I had the privilege of coming down and visiting in July of 2021. James was still reading. James was taking a math class online. Through it all, James lived his life to the fullest. Definitely. Totally respect him, respect you all's union, looking at the picture, remembering that special day. And it was just beautiful to see Black love live every day. So, that's so much on my mind. But I think we should stand again, and I think we should give Marcia a round of applause because she loved. Let's keep projected in love. I love you, girl. I'll always get you.
Yes, we love you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have the Head families.
So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm James Head. I'm from Oakland, California, and Benita Reagan, my wife, who couldn't be here, and I have been friends with James and Marcia for a very, very long time. I think in terms of the program, Benita would probably say it should be Reagan/Head versus Head, and she's watching, I think. And so appreciate the opportunity to be here. There's a couple of things that I guess I would say about James that I think others have sort of already said, but I think are worth emphasizing to some extent. I'm a lawyer, my wife Benita's a lawyer, Marcia's a lawyer, and we would have these conversations with James because he was a staunch advocate for people who didn't have voice for themselves. And in his lobbying work, he always emphasized the need for those who were most marginalized to have a voice. And we'd have these conversations, and James would start expounding these legal theories and legal principles, and none of us ever challenged him because, one, he always felt that he was right, and two, he was so passionate about it, and so I think he would be excited for the young people who have said that they are headed to law school or who are lawyers, and you know, I think he would also agree that we need more lawyers who can advocate in the way that he advocated. And you talked about sports, and I think James would be proud, having grown up in the Bay Area in Richmond and especially Oakland, that the Golden State Warriors are the champs for another year. And they will always be, in our minds, the Oakland Warriors, even though they're in San Francisco now, but Oakland owns them and will always own them. And James, also, one of the things that I found that was really appreciative with him, our son, who is an athlete, a basketball athlete, and he actually works part-time for the Warriors, but has pursued sort of a basketball career overseas. And James would always give me advice, having been an athlete, about the need to make sure that Chris understood that you can play sports for a certain period of time, but then you have to have, you know, what James called the backup plan. For James, it was doing the lobbying work and having his own business, and I just always appreciated that from James and his perspective, because he knew of what he was talking about, having been an athlete. I will say, Broderick, I graduated from the University of Georgia, both law school and undergrad, and thank Michigan for the opportunity to get to the national championship this past year. So blue. Favorite color, blue. Yes. But I'll end with a story that as you look through the pictures and you see, and people have talked about how James liked to cook, but he also liked to eat. And our son, who graduated from Hampton University in Virginia, Marcia and James were gracious enough to come to Chris's graduation. And so we did the graduation and wanted to just have an after the graduation dinner. And Chris had made a decision, because he knew the restaurants there, and he and his fellow sort of students had been around, that he wanted to go to this place that was a family buffet style. And I forget the name of it now, but it was you know, it was one of those moderate kind of restaurants, Golden Corral, you may have heard. So I didn't sort of clear that with Marcia. And so we drive up to the Golden Corral and James and Marcia are with us, and I could look at Marcia and see that Marcia was sometimes giving. Those of you who know Marcia, you know what I'm talking about. Because Marcia's, I think, view was, you know, this was a really great occasion, and something a little bit more elegant was probably in order. And she was probably right, but Chris, you know, the two reasons he gave to us for wanting to be there was, one, it was where he and his college students usually went, where they could, you know, pay one price and eat as much as they could. And two, a number of his friends were gonna also sort of be there, and so he wanted to be able to commemorate with them. So I kind of tried to, you know, as you do with Marcia, you kind of say, yeah, we'll do something to distance Marcia and make sure that we, you know, we really get the elegance nature of this and into what we are doing. And then I looked around and I was sort of like, well, where's James? Because, you know, I didn't know, and looked around, and James had already gotten his plate and had gotten in line and was beginning to, you know, to take advantage of the buffet. And I think that was just so James. And so, and it's just, we just really have appreciated the friendship that he and Marcia have brought to us, and I'm just proud to be here and to be able to hear from others who experience the same things that we experienced with James. So Marcia, thank you for introducing us to James, and he will always be in our hearts and minds, and just really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts about the kind of person that he was. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Grays.
Hi, I'm Deborah Gray, and Marcia and I have known each other from University of Alabama, Birmingham, for some 47 years plus. But my last opportunity to spend with James was on this past Easter Sunday, and although he was frail, he always affectionately called me baby girl. And yes, so he leaned over, I leaned over, and he grabbed me and he messed up my hair right before church. But I'll always remember James and his kind heart, and yes, his good meals.
My name is Arthur Gray, and Deborah, my wife, and Marcia are members of the Salmon, Pink, and Apple Green Society. That's the connection. My first encounter with James was around the year 2000. My family had a family reunion in Washington, D.C. James and Marcia were already living there. They came over to the picnic where we were having our gathering. And I met James, and he had a very engaging personality because we had a passion. James had a passion for football. I had a passion for football. Therein lies with the connection. So the conversation could never end. He talked about the times at Stanford, talked about the times at Minnesota. So even though I did not see him much over the years, there was always that connection there, that passion for football. And I've heard many of the conversations and people up speaking prior to us, and it was amazing that everybody knows this guy can cook. I thought I was going to get here and talk about his culinary skills, and it's been said by everybody up here. So I'm not going to talk about James' culinary skills. You know, good at gardening, but James was a tough guy. His legacy will be how tough he is, how tough he was. Because we all know the great baseball player, Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth had a quote. He said, "It's hard to beat a man who won't give up." It's hard to beat a man who won't give up. James encountered this illness many years ago, but he never complained. He lived life normal. James never wanted empathy or sympathy. He just wanted to live his life. So James' legacy will be the toughest in that he abided by the words of, or I should say, the advice of Babe Ruth, in that he just didn't give up. He just kept living his life as though the cancer was not even there. And he lived until he died. And sure, cancer won. I guarantee you, that disease has some good licks on it, because James got a few licks. Yeah, the cancer won, but James got his licks. So his legacy would be that James was a tough guy. He was a cook. He was a gardener. He was a football player. His legacy will be that he was a tough guy. Okay.
Thank you. Up next, we have the Jones and the McBride family.
Hello, everyone. I didn't prepare anything today, but Marcia told me not to say this. I'm sorry. When I first met James, he was doing yard work. Everybody knows he likes to yard. So we went down to Lowe's to go shopping. He said, "Rick, I got to tell you something." He said, "Don't take this personally, but I'm a bottom feeder." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Here, come on, I'll show you." Took me all the way in the back behind Lowe's where they keep the old stuff. He said, "Yeah, put that in the car." I said, "Okay." Now everybody's talking about how they learned something from him. So now when I go to Home Depot and Lowe's, that's what I do. I got to meet James on his last days, and I'm military, so I was overseas a lot, so we didn't have a lot of communication or calls, anything like that. But when I did meet him, like I've always known. Thank you, James, for everything. Taking care of my aunt. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Next up, we have virtually on the call, Vicki Jordan. I'm here. So Vicki Jordan, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I didn't prepare anything either, but I just wanted you all to know, my mother brought James home to our house in Orlando, Florida, over 40 years ago. And when I met him then, he became the best big brother I've ever had in my life. And by that being so, he taught me a lot of things. My mother was in politics. She was the president of the state of Florida Labor Board Union. So what I didn't learn from her, I learned from my brother James. And every time he came home, he took me under his wings and taught me everything I know. Now I am a campaign consultant. I have my own team that I put out to work in the field, and none of this would have been possible without my brother. When I tell you, I'm gonna miss him, and I don't know how I'm gonna make it with some days without him. I don't, but I love him so much, like I love myself. I'm so sorry, but he was my rock. He was my everything for a brother. There is no other brother that you could ever have like James Ferguson. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much. Oh God.
Thank you. Next up, we have Melvin Olson. Melvin Olson on the phone.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. We'll move to the Hardwicks. Where's Melvin? Melvin, yeah, okay.
Melvin might not be here.
We're getting the,
Hello?
For now, we'll move on to the Hardwick.
I don't think they can hear me. Because they
We can hear you over Zoom.
They were just there, always, and we just reciprocated the love to each other, and it's just something that I will always cherish, and just be thankful that I was able to meet such a wonderful person, and just listen to everybody talk. I thought of something, I don't know if it's ever been said or quoted, but you know, it's like you never realize when you're in the presence of greatness until you hear others speak of how great a person really was. And it's just a privilege to have known him. And thank you, Marcia, for sharing it.
I wasn't prepared for this, like so many of you all. James met me. I didn't meet James. He met me. I was in envy of his flowers in their yard. We stayed up the street, and we always had to pass the house to go home. So when we moved down the street, 2 doors down, you know, I'm like, man, this guy, and I would always see him out there. I wasn't a yard guy. First house had about 12 million trees. Didn't even think about the yard until I got down 2 houses down. And I said, now, I cannot let this man outdo me. And so I started spending money, and he rolled up in that white Sequoia, roll down the window. Hey, young man, what you doing? I said, nothing. I didn't know him at the time. And I'm like, okay, what's this guy? And so he said, well, I'm your neighbor down the street. And I said, oh, you the guy with the roses and just the yard. He said, yeah. He said, seems like you're doing a good job. And I said, well, I'm trying to get like you. He said, no, I want you to be better than me. He said, I'm an old man. And I said, no, man, I see you down there cutting the grass on your knees, pulling, weeding, everything. And so we just developed that friendship. To me, it was a mentorship because I listened, he spoke. I tried to do what he encouraged me and what he said. He didn't tell me what to do. He gave great advice or he hinted. And just like Mr. Richards said, I didn't know he was a Bible thief. He told me, he said, hey man, why you spending all that money? Because I seen him at Lowe's. And I was back there, like he said, the bag was busted, and now he said, hey man, get that, put it on the cart. He said, hey, and you go up there and tell him it's half price because it's total. So to this day, if I see anybody back there, don't bother that. That's mine. And just let y'all know, I still to the day do that. So he believed in me. He wanted me to get more involved in our neighborhood association. I didn't believe in myself, but now I have to because he believed in me and he supported me and he gave me confidence. So I am gonna step up and take the role that he wanted me to take. So with the help of Marcia, because this one, don't hide back there. Because I am new to this, so I am gonna need a lot of help, but I know Marcia is gonna be there. And I'll be there for her. Simone, thank you for taking care of your sister and your brother. Yeah, and like everybody says, sharing him with us. I just hate, I only have known him for 3 years. That's our misfortune. A lot of you known him 30, 40 years, and just hearing you all speak, it touched me, and it's gonna continue to touch me, and he is a great man to me, and he will always be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have the Arringtons.
Good afternoon, everybody. I didn't know we were gonna be speaking like that. And when I looked at the program, we were the last ones listed, so I think that's because we are maybe the newest friend. And the connotation of the word friend, thank you. Because listening to everybody who spoke about James as their friend, I feel honored to be included as a friend. I am the treasurer of our homeowners association. And I was that when James came in. And I thought I had my duties down pat, and I thought I was doing a really good job. And this man started calling me at 7 o'clock in the morning. Arrington, we need to have a meeting. Arrington, we need to do this. Arrington, I need this, and I was like, who is this man? You know, where's the president that we had? Because I didn't have to do all this, but he was a man of conviction. He was a man of integrity. And if he was gonna do it, you're gonna do it right. And I know I had it right. And I know I got it right. But he made me better. he made me want to, which I wanted to do it anyway, because as you guys know, this is a civic duty, you volunteer to do this. But James wanted the best for our community. He made you wanna do your best, wanna be your best, and I tell you, I work harder at that job than I do my regular job. And it's some nice, and I was just telling my friend the other day, I'm like, I'm not gonna do this after this year. But in his absence, I got to carry on. It is an honor to be here with you guys. And oh, Steve, don't you call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. Don't do it. But I hate listening to you all, and I did not get to know him longer. I remember when they first moved into our community in Brown House with the wraparound porch. Nextdoor.com, James Ferguson. Hi, neighbors. My wife Marcia and I just moved from DC and we like playing cards. Why don't y'all come down on Friday night? Who is this man? Who is this guy? But I didn't take the invitation because I too love playing cards, and his wisdom, his honesty, his ability to share and just make you feel included. I missed out on so much. I missed out. You're blessed to have had him. And I remember at this party that you guys both said to each other, you are the love of my life. And those words rendered in me, and I see it. I see, and I saw. I've been very reluctant, well, not very reluctant. I didn't know what to say to you. I didn't know how to approach you because it's been so much. But you and I had a conversation the other day, and it meant so much to me. We love you, and we're here for you. And thank you for including us as his friend.
As my wife said, I met James, I was out picking up paper on my street. And he just drove by in his truck. He said, he just rolled the windows down. He said, hey, what you say? I said, right behind him. He said, I'm James Ferguson. I introduced myself. So I'm Ken Arrington. He said, oh, I know you, I know your wife. I said, then he said, then we just got talking about football. Then we started talking about something else. I'm out here picking up paper, he's in the truck. And then he said, then we started talking about, I said, I admire you. I said, outside every day cutting your grass. I hear your lawnmower out there, because I say across the lakefront. I said, I hear your lawnmower out there, and it made me want to get him go out and cut my grass. And then we got to talking about, I was weedy one day, and I fell in the lake. You know, I ran into the lake with my lawnmower, you know. You know, so I didn't feel so bad when I fell in the lake and couldn't get out. I'm hollering to my wife, weeds are growing, I'm in the lake trying to crawl out, you know. And then Jenny said, don't get mad. I was on my zero turn, and I ran in the lake. You know, he said, look, don't you feel bad? It's all right. You know, so I just enjoyed him, just the conversation with him, and I enjoyed it. He just made you feel welcome. When you came to his home, you know, you make you feel welcome. He introduced me to this drink, and he said, oh, you like that, don't you? So I had about 5 or 6 of them. But he just make you feel at home. He just make you feel worthy just being around. I'm like the rest of you guys. I wish I'll know them longer, but I just know for a short time. But I just love to see him. I just like to see him driving by. You know, he waved at me all the time. You know, it just he will be missed. And when I stopped noticing not in the yard as much, I was like, you need me to come by and help you cut the grass? He said, no, just come by and just watch some football with me. He said, I don't need you to cut grass, we just watch some football together, something like that. But I hate by me working all the time, I just enjoy it. As he's retired, I said, that's what I wanna do when I retire. I wanna be in my yard, I wanna do this kind of stuff like he was doing in his yard. It just made me wanna do more in my yard and wanna do something outside like he was doing, you know? I said, he's a little older than me, but he's out there every day. So I just admire him being out there, and just the camaraderie, just seeing him out there, I just love that, and I just wish one day that I can do the same thing when I retire next year, so I'm looking forward to it. And he will be missed, and we love him dearly, and I just can't imagine not being with the one that you love. So God bless you, and
I gotta say this, and I'm gonna sit down. James can make you do things that you didn't wanna do. In 60 years, I've never put a black-eyed pea in my mouth. And we were at brunch or something one day, and he made black-eyed peas soup.
Yes.
And I ate so much black-eyed peas. I could not believe it. So every time I open a can for him now, that's what I do. I don't want black-eyed peas. I want some black-eyed peas soup. So I mean, that's the cooking everybody was talking about. He was trying to plan this men cook in the neighborhood or something, and I sure hate we didn't get to it. But I just wanted to say that about the cooking because everybody spoke about it. He could really cook. So thank y'all.
We have a number of James's friends over his remarkable life who are here by Zoom. There's a list of about 10, and so we would ask that everyone keep their remarks to about 2 minutes. And I want to name the first 5 so this group of folks can get ready and the videographer can get ready as well. The first 5 will be in this order: Ann Kenny, Faye Martin, Cynthia Dellums, Louis Shorter, and Taru Brooks. So those will be the first 5, and then we will get to the next 5. So first, Ann Kenny.
Hello there. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, raise your hand, Broderick. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you on Zoom.
We can hear you on Zoom. Can they hear me in the room?
And yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So anyway, hi, Ann Kenny here. Thank you, Marcia, and everyone else who helped to put this program together. This has been so incredibly heartwarming, taking this journey through James's life, and I'm finding it very healing because it's filling the void that we all feel in losing him. James was one of the very first people I met when I arrived at Stanford in 1971 from the East Coast. I was far away from home, excited, nervous, trying to find my West Coast footing. And I will always remember the first time I saw him. He was visiting Robley Hall, my co-ed dorm, clearly scoping out the new freshman arrivals. As he was a hot upperclassman, super defensive back, a sophomore. He stopped at the open door of my room, which I was sharing with 2 other women, and he just stood there checking us out, this funny grin on his face. He didn't say anything for about a minute. He just grinned. And he was wearing looking dapper, of course, a blue and white casual outfit. But what struck me was his pants. His jeans were perfectly ironed and creased. I had never seen creased jeans before. Who creases their jeans? who starches and creases their jeans, but I had also never met anyone like James before. And once we became buds, inseparable friends, I became aware of his many talents beyond the 50-yard line. Among those, his keen fashion sense and appreciation for beautifully tailored clothing and his ability to sew these items. He taught me how to quickly and easily hem a pair of pants. Out of respect for his Virgo neatness obsession, and essentially to avoid an argument, I learned to iron my crinkled t-shirts and casual California frocks. We would hop in my little Toyota, head up to San Francisco and window shop for hours along Union Square. Throughout our 50-year deep friendship, we've shared much more than fashion tips. We've seen each other through many of life's phases, personal and professional. His love of anthropology, which was his undergrad major, sports, law, politics, cooking, his kitty cats, classic cars, gardening, watches, pens, and art. And I've had the pleasure of spending time with James and Marcia. Marcia, the absolute love of his life, his soulmate, his lighthouse. To this day, I still iron my t-shirts, or at least I take them out of the dryer immediately. I will miss you, my beautiful friend, your perfectly creased jeans, your wit, your intellect, your artistic sensibilities, but most of all, that grin.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Faye Martin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Faye Martin Keys, and I'm Dr. Faye Martin Keys because of James. Our families grew up in Santa Ray in Oakland, and one day James came to town, and I had lost my way. And so I say, you know, he saved my life. He gave me some tough love and told me I needed to do the things I said I wanted to do. So I sit here before you today as an associate professor at Wayne State University because James saved my life and made me get up and do the things I said I wanted to do. I thank you. I love you, Marcia.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, Cynthia Gullows. Louis Shorter.
Yeah, Louis. She
We have Louis.
double once.
Is Teru Brooks here?
I know we have Louis. I'm sorry. Louis is here.
Okay,
Yes. We met James and Marcia when they moved down the street from us in Washington, D.C. And Marsha Williamson, the lady who spoke a few minutes ago, lived next door to them. By the way, James was working on her backyard doing some serious landscaping, and he called me in to take a look, and the yard was a mess. I just didn't see how he was going to put it all together, but he did. James Ferguson knew all about landscape. He knew about art. Often he would cook sweet potato pies and bring them up to our house, and the pies were still warm. And we would hurry up and eat our meal and just dive into the pie. And then sometimes he'd have pound cakes going and all that. The things I remember about James is I would tell him I'd be reading a book, and James would tell me he's reading 3 books. And he'd like to mark his books in the margins, you know, so that they would give him little cues and clues on what that paragraph had to say. And I one day asked him, I said, James, what do you do with your books? He said, I just save them. I use all my books for reference. I don't throw books away. Anyway, James was a guy I looked up to, but he looked up to me also. And one day, maybe 10, 15 years ago, he told me he looked up to me and thought I was a great guy. And it's very interesting because when I called James a few weeks ago, a few weeks before he passed, he told me, he said, Louis, I really look up to you and I think you're a great guy. And it was a very, very touching thing for him to say. James likes Saabs, Saab automobiles. And when I was a younger guy interested in cars and all that, I used to think anybody who drove a Saab was a very, very intelligent person. And they knew something that the rest of us didn't know. There's very few people drove Saabs at that time. And James knew about Saabs and he had classic Saabs. I think he even had one when he passed. Well, I will end my remarks at this point and say Marcia and Simone and all the family, my condolences go out to you. You have my support and all the family and friends as well. And so I wish you well. I'm here for you and may God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I remember a green convertible Saab. When it ran, it was a beautiful car. It was a hard car to maintain. Is Tarut Brooks on?
I don't see
Okay, so the next five will be first Reginald McGill, Patty Sue Plumer, Dwight and Rhonda Kirk, Doris Mason, and Earl O'Neill. So first, okay, so Reginald McGill. Patty Sue is in transit. Okay. Dwight and Rhonda Kirk. You're next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. We're getting a little feedback in. You have more than one device?
Yeah, they have, tell them you need to use one. They have two devices.
You have two devices, one, you can just mute one or eliminate one.
She got to unmute herself. Hold on.
Y'all ready?
Hold on, I'm finna unmute her for you. Just I'm trying to find her name because I can't spell. It's on her end. Well, she's
okay. As we try to straighten that out, why don't we go to Doris Mason? Do we have Doris Mason? We'll come back to the Kirks. Do we have Doris Mason?
I think so. Yes, we do.
We do? Okay. Doris Mason, we'll come back to the Kirks. Hi, Doris.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Thank you.
Okay, I am Doris Mason in the great state of Tennessee, and I'm calling because of my dear friend Marcia and also James. James was one who was professional, respectful, courteous, pragmatic, political, and I would also have to add to that humility. And I would say that because he was one that I felt that could meet anyone from the lowest to the highest. And when you can do that, that means you're pretty much an all-around person and a good person. And I felt that when I was first introduced to him when we were working at AFSCME in Washington, D.C. But having just recently lost my own husband, a lot of this is basically for Marcia and to let you know, Marcia, that you are deeply loved. Jet and I are continuing to keep you in prayer. We pray that you will understand that God does things for a reason. And certainly you kept up a good fight and you did everything possible in taking care of your husband, your mother, and other family members. For that, you are truly blessed. I would just like to say to you something that I continue to keep in my own mind and heart during this time is in 1 Corinthians 15 and 58. And it says, therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. And for that, God loves you, we love you, and we just ask you to continue to be strong and keep the faith. Love you much.
We have Earl O'Neill.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I know Marcia before I knew James because we all worked at ASME together. And Marcia used to always get mad at me because in DC, I'm from DC, Washington, DC. And we have a saying, if somebody's not dressed right, you know, we call them a Bama, and she would just get mad. But it wasn't about Alabama. It was about just you don't know how to dress. But then she met a fella who could dress, which is James. James began to work in my department, the political department. And when he came on, we call him, he was one of Jury's kids. And the deal is that when you talk about voter registration, voter mobilization, James joined us, and we said the key is, and it's prevalent today, most on a partisan basis, most people are not going to get Black folks, and put money into the community. So we do nonpartisan get out to vote. So when James came on, we would split up the country, and James would be in the South, and I would be in the Midwest. And the thing about James, and we talking about Black folks, and the one thing about James, everybody's talking about where he could dress and everything, but what used to get me is that when James go into a union hall or something like that, and it was white people who was the president or whatever, they always get intimidated by James because he was a sharp Black man, you know what I mean? And he knew what he was talking about. And I'm gonna leave you with this story. James would be in the South. I remember one election cycle, he was in Florida, Alabama, Texas and everything. And he called me one day and I was in the Midwest. And he said, Earl, they doing this, they doing that, and they're doing this. I was in St. Louis. I left the airport and got a car. And I'm looking at the car wouldn't start, a rental car. And I say, the air conditioning, the heat is messed up. And then when I passed the bank, it said 30 below. And so I'm on the phone with James and he's talking about, Earl, they just messing with me. They doing this. I said, James, where are you at? He said, I'm in Orlando. I said, what the degrees? What's the weather like down there? He said, it's 8. I said, if you don't get off this phone, I'm gonna bust you upside your head with a brick. You know what I mean? But that's the relationship we had with James. He was it was a group of us, because you ever been in your office and most people say, when they see 4 or 5 Black folks together, they say, it must be a Black caucus meeting. We used to do that at the Union Hall. It'd be me, Dwight, and a couple other people just saying that. And we would do that. But James, Marcia, I'm always here. You know, you're my little sister. Like I say, we used to eat chicken wings together before you met James. You know, and I'm always there if you need anything, me and Francine and the kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have the Kirks? I think that's whose voices we were hearing. So back to all right. White and Rhonda. You're up. You have a beautiful smile. We can hear you.
What?
Yeah.
Hello? What?
Yeah. We can't hear you.
Oh, let's try this.
Yeah. Maybe try it. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Maybe it's the volume button on your laptop or whatever device you're using. We still can't hear you. We'll
We'll keep trying. Hold on, let me try these. This is like classic Zoom. We all know these experiences. Pre-COVID. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Anyway, why don't we move next to, we have a couple of video messages sent in. You want to go to that next one, see with. What's this name? Keep on showing up here. What's this name?
Or just
Rhonda and Dwight are here.
things to say, things to say.
Well, I'll do these two things, and since time is growing short, I will just point out that the dedication from Senator Joyner is on the back of the table here. There's also a proclamation from the city of, the mayor of the city of Orlando. And again, we're going to put them on the back. Please feel free to read them, read the card. We're very grateful for the expressions of sympathy that they have shared with us.
We love y'all. James Jethro Ferguson III, my godfather.
Marcia, you should go ahead with your.
Okay. All right. I guess it's my time to tell my story about things. And first of all, I want to just say to those folks who came up here the first, without any prior notice and expressed the beautiful sentiments that you did, my gratitude. And I knew that that is exactly what you would do because you loved him like I do. So to try to bring up a little, obviously over the 30 years that James and I were together, 20 of which we were married, I have lots of stories. But I decided to choose one because I feel that it is the most appropriate one today to honor not only James, but our friend and artist, Stephen Carter, who passed away last year. And many of us really didn't even know that Stephen had passed. And also his memorial celebration is today. Again, he was just a James and I went to Stephen's art studio several years ago. And Stephen took a picture of us and he mailed it to us. And when we got it, James called Stephen and complained about the fact that it's so and how wrong that was on so many levels. And let me tell you, I was scared and I was and I was pretty big. Well, several days later, we received the same picture where Stephen had very much James's stuff. But of course, James is very happy. As I looked at some of the pictures that James and I took recently, I see that in one picture that I had to include because it was all of the neighbors sitting in this room. I was thinking, oh my God, because I had a lot of stuff going on, and I also had a very, very bad hair. So you'll see that picture, but like I said, to me, it was a great picture. I included it in the memorial book. Again, a gathering of friends and family on James's last birthday. I hope that James and Stephen are sitting together somewhere, laughing like crazy, saying, two absolutely incredible men. And some of our friends and neighbors who spoke to me, I think they were very modest about their contribution to us. We heard the Arringtons talk about falling in the lake Well, Deborah Walker called me one day and she said, Marcy, come on, you see that your husband. He's on the zero turn and the zero turn is into Lincoln. I'm sending it right over there. And for Carol Eisman, who, for being there with snow and pain, continued and for being there and for comforting me. And so, again, I think and the friendship that we have to others who came today and traveled so far, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. So in closing, there are so many people to thank for their support and assistance. Many of them are listed on back page booklets or on them. Is friends and healthcare providers who took extremely good care of him, comforted him, comforted him. And there are several family friends not listed there. I want to recognize for their contribution to today's celebration. Of course, Roger and family, and thank you so much, Roger, for helping put all of this together. You and Kurt. Kurt, I don't even know your name. Thank you for a beautiful job and for making this a very meaningful celebration. I also want to thank White Kurt, who we're trying to hear from, who prepared the announcements. We raised a beautiful announcement. I want to thank family members of the Curtis Lake Clarence Watson, Brenda Cutright for giving me information for the memorial conference. I also want to thank the staff here today at the Hilton Garden Inn, Jennifer Jackson in particular, the event planner, and the staff who both did the extra long. All of you took the time to celebrate with us today, celebrate James' life. My gratitude is bless you. I want to end by saying this. We remember James, whose memory is a comfort. His life fulfilled, no longer caught up in earth's struggles. He is now in his eternal resting place, and it's my greatest hope. He fills his joy, for he left me with many joyful things. I pray that there will be gladness in the nation, because that's what it is.
We can conclude celebration. Yes. Now we have a reception.
Yes.
Yes.
Please. All
All right, thank you all.
Did you capture all of her remarks?
I had